My name is Claire Dawson, and $23,000 didn't just disappear from my account. Someone I loved made it disappear. It started with a blinking cursor on my online banking screen and a sinking feeling in my stomach that I already knew who was behind it. For most of my life, I believed being the reliable one, the fixer, the quiet problem solver, meant safety. That if I kept giving, kept covering for everyone else's chaos, eventually, someone would notice. Someone would say thank you. But what I learned instead is that when you're the steady one, people don't notice when you break. They only notice when you stop fixing. And I did stop. Not with shouting, not with slammed doors, but with documentation, with receipts, with proof. This story isn't about revenge. It's about boundaries, about standing up, quietly, firmly, when no one expects you to. Before I dive into how it all unraveled, let me know in the comments. Where are you watching from? And if you've ever had to draw a line between yourself and your own family, hit like, subscribe, because this is for the ones who stayed silent for too long and finally chose not to anymore. It started with a sinking pit in my stomach and a blinking cursor on the online banking screen. The number in my savings account had gone from $23,406 to $92.16. No overdraft, no pending transactions, just gone. My apartment in Denver was quiet that evening, almost cruelly so. The hum of the refrigerator, the occasional creak from the ceiling, the faint tick of the heating vent. It all served as background noise to the single thought pounding in my head. This wasn't a mistake. It was a decision. My mom always said Alyssa had a soft heart. I used to believe that, until my savings vanished. I scrolled through the transaction history with trembling fingers. Withdrawals, 3 of them, all at an ATM in Cherry Creek, less than 4 blocks from my parents' house. The timestamps were late at night, spaced over 2 days, just under the daily withdrawal limit. I pressed my thumb and forefinger against my temples. I hadn't been to Cherry Creek in over a month. No one else had access. At least, no one who was supposed to. I clicked the Contact Bank button. 20 minutes on hold. The customer service rep was polite, but useless. "No, Ms. Dawson. We cannot reverse withdrawals made using a valid PIN. Do you want to file a fraud report?" I said yes, but even as I did, I knew what they'd find. A working card, a matching PIN, and my name on the account. A clean theft, courtesy of someone who knew me. I walked to the kitchen, phone in hand, heart pounding. I dialed the landline at home. My mother answered after 2 rings. "Hi, Mom, it's Claire." "Oh, Claire, how are you?" Her voice was syrupy sweet. I could picture her sitting on the living room couch, feet tucked under a fleece blanket, probably with Alyssa beside her. "I need to ask you something. Did she take my card?" A pause. Then a brittle laugh. "Don't be ridiculous. Why would Alyssa do that?" "Because $23,000 just disappeared from my account, and the ATM logs place it near your house. Do you think that's a coincidence?" "She wouldn't steal from you, Claire. Maybe there was a banking error. Maybe you messed up your math." I felt the heat rise in my face. "Mom, I'm an auditor. I don't mess up math. If she needed money, she could have asked. Not stolen." That did it. The line went dead. No goodbye, no defense. Just the quiet, deliberate click of a hang-up. I stared at the phone in disbelief. Then, it buzzed. A text from Alyssa. "You're still alive, aren't you? Chill." I stood in the middle of my apartment, frozen. The audacity. No apology, no denial. Just smug cruelty wrapped in passive aggression. My fingers trembled as I opened my wallet. The slot where I'd hidden the spare ATM card, tucked behind my driver's license, was empty. I never used that card. Never touched it. But I'd shown Alyssa once, years ago, when she said she wanted to learn about adulting. And now I knew. She didn't ask. She planned. I didn't fight back. I documented. That's how you survive a family like mine. The cafe was quiet, with just enough background chatter to mask my thoughts. I sat in the corner booth, laptop open, coffee growing cold. On the screen, a still frame from the ATM footage stared back at me. Alyssa's face, illuminated by the harsh glow of the machine, her hand extended, clutching a card that wasn't hers. She looked confident, entitled, like the money was owed to her. Logan's words echoed in my mind. You don't need rage, you need receipts. I clicked save, naming the file. Underscore withdrawal footage underscore 01. Then another. Bank statement underscore February 24. The numbers were clear. The timestamps didn't lie. And with every folder I created, the sinking ache in my chest began to harden into something colder, something sharper. The doorbell above the cafe door jingled. I looked up, and there he was, Logan Blake. He hadn't changed much in the last year. Same pressed coat, same calm gait. His eyes scanned the room, found me instantly, and held that unreadable expression he always wore when he didn't want me to see what he was feeling. I stood, unsure whether to smile or brace for impact. Claire. He nodded, voice neutral. Thanks for coming, I said, gesturing to the seat across from me. He sat down without hesitation, pulling out a manila folder. You said you needed legal clarity. I nodded and turned the laptop toward him. 3 withdrawals, $2,000 per day, max limit, from my account. That's my sister. He studied the footage for a moment, then the statement. Did you report it? I filed fraud, but the bank won't do much. She used a valid PIN. He sighed, fingers steepled. Technically, that makes it a personal theft, not bank liability. But combined with evidence, we might have something. He reached into his folder and slid over a printed document. Colorado statute. Theft involving financial instruments. If you can prove she used the card without consent, it qualifies. I pulled out another stack of papers. Meticulously compiled records. Receipts, Venmo screenshots, rental contributions, even that time I paid her tuition deposit. This is what I've given them, over $48,000 in the last 3 years. Logan's brows rose slightly. You were her safety net. I shrugged. And her excuse. He leaned back, staring at the ceiling for a beat before exhaling. You always did everything quietly. I looked up. I'm not trying to ruin her. I just want her to know I see her. That this won't keep happening. He opened his folder again, pulling out a single-page draft. At the top, notice of intent to pursue legal action. He placed it gently on the table between us. You don't have to send this today, but you will. The paper felt heavier than it should. I didn't touch it. Instead, I watched Logan. His face softened, just a little. He wasn't here to push. Not yet. But he was here. My phone buzzed. Alyssa had posted a new story. A photo of her in oversized sunglasses, cocktail in hand, glossy lips curled into a smirk. The caption read, Some people make money, others make excuses. Guess which I am. She'd tagged the restaurant I once helped sponsor, a chic bistro in Lodo that I'd nearly emptied my emergency fund to support during their launch. The audacity, the precision. She wasn't hiding. She was flaunting, and I wasn't going to stay silent forever. Last year, I paid for Alyssa's birthday. This year, I wasn't even invited. It wasn't just the silence that hurt. It was the absence, the deliberate erasure. My phone buzzed all morning with notifications from social apps, tags, check-ins, boomerangs of clinking glasses and cupcakes, but nothing from my family. Not a single word. I opened our old group message, the one titled Dawson's. I couldn't find it. Gone. I scrolled through my texts. That's when I saw the last message from Mom, sent 3 days ago. Don't come, Claire. It'll ruin the mood. Ruin the mood. I stared at the words until they blurred. Then I opened the folder on my desk, full of neatly clipped receipts, screenshots, emails. I didn't rage. I aligned. Dates, amounts, transactions, notes. Her name on every withdrawal, my name on every deposit. I grabbed my keys and dialed Logan. His voice was dry when he picked up. "You saw the story?" "I saw everything." "You're not going to scream, are you?" "No," I said, "but I am going to show up." An hour later, I found him already waiting outside the Ivy Room. Dressed clean but casual, sleeves rolled, watching the lights from inside flicker across the tall glass windows. Inside, laughter spilled like champagne. He held out a USB drive. "Projector's hooked up. You'll have 60 seconds. I took it. "Thanks. You sure you want to do this?" "She made it public," I said. I'm just matching her energy. I slipped past the valet unnoticed, ducked around the side entrance Logan had arranged through an old contact. In the shadows of the hallway, the music pulsed steady, familiar. I saw friends from college clinking glasses, co-workers I hadn't spoken to in months. My mother sitting proudly at the center table, clutching her glass like it was all hers to celebrate. Then Alyssa, on a small makeshift stage, dressed in a silk slip, smiling wide. "And I just want to thank everyone for being here tonight," she was saying, voice sugary. "This year's been a journey, but if I've learned anything..." She paused, hand on heart. "It's that family is the only thing that never fails." I stepped into the room. No one noticed at first. Then someone turned. A slight hush moved like a ripple through the crowd. I didn't speak. I didn't wave. I simply walked to the back to the small tech table near the DJ and inserted the drive. The screen behind Alyssa flickered once, then lit up. Footage, Alyssa, a TM, February 11th, her hand, my card. The room didn't gasp. Not yet. But it breathed in sharply. And I hadn't said anything. Not one word. Customers started whispering. Eyes darted from screen to table to mother to me. The projection looped, zoomed once, paused on her smirk as she pocketed the cash. I stood by the wall, arms folded, watching the lies fold in on themselves. And I waited. There's a silence that comes right after betrayal is proven. It's not peace. It's impact. The video ended without music, just the soft mechanical whir of the projector, like a breath held too long. 80 people, maybe more, frozen in a room decked with helium balloons, champagne flutes, and the illusion of a perfect daughter. No one clapped. No one moved. On the screen, Alyssa's smirk still hovered mid-frame, paused by Logan's careful edit. Her hand clutching the money, that very same cardigan from last month's birthday post. The story had gone viral for its aesthetic. Now it was evidence. I stepped closer, the folder in my hand firm. My heels clicked against the hardwood. Each sound punctured the silence like a nail in a coffin. "Last month," I began, holding up the first page, "someone withdrew $23,000 from an account only I had access to, except for one hidden card I'd stored in my apartment." Gasps. But not from strangers, from neighbors, co-workers, old friends who remembered when Alyssa borrowed 100 here, a few hundred there. I clicked the remote. The next slide showed the bank statement. Date, time, amount, location. I let it sit there for 3 seconds, then I added the text exchange. Her response, "It's not stealing. She owes me." I could hear someone whisper, "She really said that?" Click. The next image. The transfer history of the past 3 years. $48,211 in support. Rent, groceries, utility bills in my mother's name, medical charges for when Mom stayed at Presbyterian after her knee surgery, every receipt, every wire, every check that no one ever thanked me for. Alyssa still hadn't moved, but Martha did. She surged from the head table, her voice rising. "You can't do this. This is slander." Logan was beside her before I even turned. "You touch that projector," he said coolly, "and you escalate the situation. That's legal evidence, filed, timestamped, and verified." Martha turned to him like she just noticed he was still alive. "You shouldn't be here. Neither should theft," he said, hands behind his back. I faced the crowd again. "You didn't just steal money," I said, voice steady. "You stole trust. From all of us. And they let you." My gaze fell on Alyssa, then shifted deliberately to Frank, who hadn't spoken all evening, and then to Martha. Her shoulders tensed, but it was too late to pretend they didn't know. Every whisper around the room had turned into judgment, the kind they couldn't control. Someone near the cake table, a man in a gray blazer, raised his hand slightly, confused. "Didn't she apply for a job with us last week?" I smiled, sharp but not cruel. "Not anymore. There's a finality in truth. It doesn't ask for applause, it just stays." The screen went black and the room slowly exhaled. People gathered their coats, chairs scraped against hardwood. A fork clinked on an abandoned dessert plate, and Alyssa stood motionless, a wine glass still in her hand, trembling just enough to spill down the side. She turned to me, eyes bloodshot and wild. "You ruined my whole life for a few numbers." Her voice cracked somewhere between a plea and an accusation. I didn't move. "It wasn't about the money," I said, low. "It was about the choice you made." She laughed, loud, broken. I was desperate. "So was I replied. "When Mom needed a $17,000 surgery no one else would cover. When you said you couldn't afford college books. When Dad's truck broke down and I wired $900 before he even asked." Her eyes darted to Martha. Martha stepped forward, arms outstretched in maternal softness. "You are blood, Claire. Families don't sue each other." I blinked once, then opened my folder again. "I'm not suing," I said, handing her the envelope. "I'm severing." Inside, a notarized letter. Financial, legal, and inheritance disassociation. The paper that said, "I owe you nothing. Not now. Not ever again." Logan appeared beside me. Not behind. Not watching, but beside. His presence made Martha flinch, as though she'd forgotten he was still involved. He slid the rest of the documents forward like a quiet coda to my sentence. "It's all there," he said calmly. "No lawsuits. Just releases. Claire isn't demanding anything. She's just done." Alyssa choked on something between a sob and a scream. "You're destroying the family." I looked at Frank. He said nothing, just adjusted his collar like the room had grown too warm. "You already destroyed it," I whispered. For years, I was the patch, the glue, the second income, the silent backbone. And none of them noticed I was cracking. Claire turned her back and said softly, "We're not family. We're a history I no longer finance." Silence followed like an echo that didn't need repeating. Outside, the night had cooled. The last guests shuffled toward their cars in awkward pairs, avoiding eye contact. I reached for my coat, but Logan gently laid his across my shoulders instead. "They can't follow you where we're going." I nodded, and we left. Sometimes you don't win with fire. You win by walking away and never turning back. The Texas heat was different from Colorado's chill. It didn't bite. It lingered, warm, almost forgiving. I stood barefoot in the middle of my new apartment, the sun pouring through wide windows and catching the edges of the hardwood like soft firelight. No boxes left. No trace of the Dawson family. Just clean lines, white walls, and a silence that didn't weigh. The notification blinked again. One new email. Subject, "I owe you an apology." From Ms. Chandler, Mom's oldest friend, the woman who once called me emotionless at a church brunch. I didn't open it. But I read the preview line again. "I always thought you were cold. Now I know you were just tired. Tired of performing. Tired of overgiving. Tired of being the sister who paid for everything but got disinvited from birthdays." On the counter sat the final statement from the joint account I shared with my parents. Empty now, except for traces, like someone's footprints you wish you'd never let in the house. I tapped freeze account. Just one button. but it felt like I'd turned a key inside myself. Across the room, Logan was setting up the mic. He didn't speak. He rarely did when I needed to be alone inside my own thoughts. But his presence was solid, not invasive. "I've labeled the session," he said quietly. "Podcast title, Blood is Not Currency." I smiled. That line used to be a joke between us. Now it was a mission. The recorder blinked red. Ready. He placed his hand on it, fingers light, but steady. Episode 1, When Family Becomes a Transaction. I leaned in. My name is Claire Dawson, and for most of my life I believed that love looked like wiring money, that being good meant staying silent while others made choices for you, with your resources, that sacrificing your future was the only way to belong. A pause. Let the silence breathe. I was told I was selfish the one time I said no. Told I was cold when I didn't show up. But not once did anyone ask why I stayed quiet, why I kept paying, why I was always the first to volunteer and the last to be remembered. The mic picked up my breath, a quiet inhale. When my sister took $23,000 from my account without asking, everyone said it was a mistake, a misunderstanding. But what they didn't see was the pattern, the slow erosion of boundaries dressed up as loyalty. Another breath. They didn't just take my savings. They took my sleep, my certainty, my worth. And that, I tapped the folder beside me gently. That's something I've taken back. I glanced at Logan. He gave a small nod, a permission without demand. The worst part? I continued. It took evidence for people to believe me. Not years of giving, not sacrifice, not exhaustion, just receipts. I reached for my phone again. The email still blinked. I tapped it open this time. "I'm sorry," it began. "I used to think Claire had no heart. Now I think we broke it, and she stopped giving because it stopped beating for us." I let it sit there on the screen. Then I returned to the mic. They took my money, but I reclaimed my worth, and that's something no one can spend. Logan leaned back, hands clasped. He didn't say anything for a beat. Then quietly, "Ready for episode 2? I turned to him, my voice firm, my chest no longer heavy. My name, finally, my own. Let's talk about guilt. The sun spilled through my apartment window like melted gold, brushing against the hardwood floor and catching on the edge of the white desk where my new life was beginning. I'd kept the space clean, intentional. Every item had a place. Nothing existed without purpose. That included me. The microphone sat silently in the center of the table, the red LED glowing like a steady heartbeat. Logan was adjusting the soundboard, fingers precise, the way he used to be with legal briefs before things got complicated between us. But here now, he wasn't my past. He was part of the scaffolding that held this version of me up. My phone buzzed again. Email. Subject. I owe you an apology. Sender. Eileen Matthews, one of my mother's longtime friends. I didn't open it, but the preview line burned itself into my mind like a scar left by something small but hot. I always thought you were cold. Now I know you were just tired. I stared at it a moment longer, then let the screen go black. That was the past knocking, and for once I wasn't obligated to answer. Instead, I opened my bank app. The joint account I'd been tricked into sharing, the one they used to funnel requests under the guise of emergencies, was still there. The balance read $47.35. I tapped the button. Freeze account. Confirm. Done. The click in my mind was louder than any digital sound could be. Logan looked up from the console. Mic's ready. I nodded. So am I. He tapped the recorder, then smiled slightly. I labeled the show already. Podcast name, Blood is Not Currency. My mouth curved just slightly. It's not a catchphrase. It's survival. He didn't argue. His fingers hovered over the record button. Episode title? When Family Becomes a Transaction. My voice was steady. No shaking, no hesitation. He pressed record. And just like that, the Claire who paid the bills, kept the peace, and bit her tongue, began to speak. My name is Claire Dawson. I began. I'm an auditor, a daughter, a sister. At least I was. For most of my life, I thought love looked like sacrifice. That being generous meant being silent. That wiring money was the same as being part of a family. I paused, the silence curling around the words like a ribbon. But then the people I loved stole from me, not by accident, not by desperation, but by design. And I realized silence wasn't loyalty. It was surrender. The sunlight moved across the table, warm against my wrist. I didn't stop. They took $23,000, but more than that, they took my history and turned it into a story they could rewrite without me. They removed me from the group chat, the family photo, the birthday guest list. But they forgot I kept receipts. A brief flicker passed in Logan's eyes. He didn't interrupt. I stood up, quietly, with facts. No yelling, no chaos. Just the truth, on screen, in front of the people who once expected me to keep their secrets. And now, I'm here. Not because I want revenge, but because I want someone out there to know you are not crazy for noticing the imbalance, for feeling used, for walking away. I breathed. It felt clean. I reached for the page in front of me, a printed apology from one of my mom's friends. I always thought you were cold. Now I know you were just tired. That line stuck with me. Not because it absolved anything, but because it acknowledged what they'd refused to say for years. I was never hard to love. I was just exhausted from being their foundation. My voice softened, but didn't waver. This podcast won't fix what's broken, but it might help someone else stop patching over cracks with hope. I paused, then closed with one final truth. They took my money, but I reclaimed my worth, and that's something no one can spend. Logan reached forward and pressed stop. Silence filled the room again, only it wasn't uncomfortable. It was earned. He leaned back and looked at me. Ready for episode 2? I met his gaze. For once, there was no hesitation in me. Let's talk about guilt. They stripped her of respect, of trust, of $23,000 and expected silence in return. But Claire chose clarity over chaos, truth over tradition. Because justice doesn't always roar in courtrooms, it can arrive in a podcast mic, a frozen bank account, and a quiet refusal to keep paying the price for other people's lies. Like a lock clicking shut on an old vault, she sealed the past and walked forward, lighter. No wall of lies can stand forever against the tide of truth. And that was how it ended. Not with screaming matches, not with a courtroom drama, not with some viral, cathartic meltdown. It ended with a frozen bank account, with a signed severance letter, with me finally choosing myself. For years, I told myself that being the dependable one, being the helper, the fixer, the sister who always showed up, was enough. That if I just stayed patient, stayed quiet, stayed giving, eventually someone would see me. But what I learned is this. People don't change when you suffer quietly for their comfort. They change, if they ever do, when you stop making it easy for them to hurt you. I used to think love looked like sacrifice. Now, I know love, real love, looks like boundaries, like protecting your peace, like saying, enough. It wasn't about the money, not really. It was about the message behind every dollar taken, every withdrawal, every erased invitation, every birthday party I paid for, and then wasn't invited to. Every group text I was quietly removed from. Every family dinner where my seat was conveniently forgotten. And when they showed up with teddy bears and tulips, wearing practiced smiles and pretending 7 years of silence could be undone with a gift bag, I realized I wasn't angry. I was done. To anyone watching this who's ever been told, don't make a scene. Why are you so sensitive? That's just how family works. Let me say this clearly. Silence isn't loyalty, and exhaustion isn't love. You don't owe anyone your mental health, your financial stability, or your peace, just because you share DNA. Walking away doesn't make you cold. It makes you free. If this story resonates with you, if you've ever been the quiet one, the responsible one, the fallback plan for people who only call when they need something, know this. You're allowed to stop. You're allowed to draw lines, to freeze accounts, literal or emotional, to protect the version of yourself you're still becoming. And if today you needed someone to remind you of that, let this be it. Thank you for watching. Thank you for staying with me until the end. Thank you for giving space to voices like mine, and maybe voices like yours too. If this story hit home, please leave a comment below. Tell me, have you ever had to set a boundary with your own family? Have you ever walked away from people who didn't value you until you stopped giving? I'll be reading your stories, because I know how lonely this kind of healing can feel. And if you know someone who needs to hear this, someone still second-guessing their right to protect themselves, share this video with them. Maybe this will be the sign they've been waiting for. And of course, if you want more stories about reclaiming your voice, setting boundaries, and finally choosing your own peace, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell, because here, we talk about the things families don't like to admit. We talk about healing, not always pretty, but always real. And we talk about remembering that you were never the problem. You were just the one who stayed too long trying to fix what was never yours to carry. Thank you. Truly. And until next time, take care of yourself. The real, quiet, radical kind of care. The kind that doesn't ask for anyone's permission.